In 1940, our nation was fighting for its life. Hitler's Germany was determined to invade our islands. And all that stood in the way were the men and women of Britain. Now a team of experts across France and Britain are uncovering fresh evidence of their incredible struggle. We're going to dig up secrets buried for 70 years, to reveal stories of heroism from Britain's most perilous year. It's very easy to forget just what 1940 meant. There's been no other year in our history that's contained so much jeopardy, and that required feats of untold heroism as we began to fight a war on land, at sea, and in the air. Ordinary men and women, and like my own grandfather, found themselves fighting for the very survival of their country as a free nation. Evidence for what they achieved lies buried all around us. So I'm joining the historians and archaeologists digging it up, and along the way discovering some extraordinary stories of heroism and tragedy. One of those heroes was Cobber Kane, one of a tiny handful of RAF pilots stationed in France, the last line of defence against the marauding Luftwaffe. Cobber would become a household name, and it all started with a dogfight 4 miles up and ended deep in the heart of a French village. I've come to the scene of that great duel, just 20 miles from the German border. 70 years ago, this was the front line, but the only fighting was in the skies above here. This is the tiny French village of Luby. Back in the autumn of 1939, the war landed here with a bang. It was here that Cobber Kane downed his first German aircraft. So in order to try and find out what may be left of it, we're going to dig the road up. The German plane we're looking for crashed from a great height right into the middle of Luby's main street. "70 years on, the mayor and residents of Luby have got together with a group of aviation archaeologists to try and uncover traces of that momentous day. Leading the team is Steve Vizard, who has over 30 years' experience in World War II aircraft recoveries. This crash is where the war started to become real. Now, Steve, you've got a fantastic contemporary photograph taken at the time showing the crash site and lots of wreckage.
That's the key feature that really gives us the right perspective, isn't it?
It is.
The windows are there, the shutters.
Everything is still in place as it was.
I imagine that area there with the smoke coming out of it, that's the crater.
That's obviously the crater.
It's not long before team member Gareth Jones finds the first piece of wreckage.
So that's a bit of our Dornier.
That's a bit of the Dornier, and this is probably one of the engine holes that's punched into the ground.
That's extraordinary.
Isn't it just?
Look at that. Is that...
That's one of the shells that didn't get fired at Copper.
So it hasn't been struck. It says 34. Is that 1934?
1934, yep, yes indeed.
The Dornier 17 would play a key role in the German blitzkrieg. Soon enough, German planes would be looming over Britain. But back at our dig, it's an historic day for the village in more ways than one. And adding to the occasion is the presence of 88-year-old RAF fighter pilot Peter Aerst. Peter flew throughout the war and won the Distinguished Flying Cross. But his first posting was here in France. Now, Peter, you were out here in the autumn of 1939 and you flew with Cobber Kane, the man that shot down this Dornier.
Yes, I flew with him many, many times.
What kind of a man was he?
Oh, he was a great character. He was a New Zealander, but a very good chap indeed and a very good pilot.
Yes. And he was very celebrated at the time, wasn't he?
Oh, yes, when he became the first RAF ace of the war.
In just a few months, Cobber Kane would shoot down at least 17 planes. For his gallantry, he was awarded the first Distinguished Flying Cross of World War II. I've got a picture of him here, a photo of him, taken at the time here.
That is a very good photograph of him.
Now, did he discuss the crash with you at all? The shooting down of this particular aircraft?
Yes, he discussed it with all the other pilots, actually. We were all interested to hear whether he got much opposition from the German aircraft and so on.
And for a sort of couple of dizzy months in that period, I mean, he was sort of like the David Beckham of his day. I mean, he was in all the newspapers, you know, radio interviews, movie-tone footage shown at the cinemas. But the thing with this is it's the history, the story behind it is absolutely paramount. Yeah. And really, if we only end up with a couple of carrier bags full of small parts, the story really makes this one.
That's not a stone. That's definitely not a stone.
It's actually been punched in the ground there.
They seem to have come across something big. Steve, that looks like a great big lump.
It is a biggish lump, yeah, but we
Straight
need...
down.
So this really is the skeleton of the airplane, isn't it? From 27,000 feet.
Straight in.
Straight in. So our picture builds.
The picture builds, yes.
Yeah,
we carry on.
Right. The engines are the heaviest part of the plane and are always buried the deepest. What's that, mate?
That's a piece of cylinder head.
Cylinder head. So this is absolutely off the engine. But as the British public celebrated the shooting down of this aircraft, they will have had no idea of the horrific war that lay ahead. Oh, look at that. That's actually still articulated.
That's in lovely condition, really.
That's still bolted together. Yeah. So we're still a way off.
But it is pointing to an engine being under the sewer, as we were told.
Gareth, there you go. Sadly, today it appears that a sewer pipe laid in the 1970s was placed right on top of one of the Dornier's engines. Frustratingly, our excavation can go no further. But it's a good start for our aviation archaeologists, and we found some sizable pieces from one of the most historic crash sites of the Second World War. You know the beginning of the TV series Dad's Army, when all the German arrows sweep across the map of Europe and push all the British ones back into the sea? Well, in May and June of 1940, that is pretty much what happened. But it all came to a head at what then, for the British public, was a little-known French fishing port called Dunkirk. British troops had been pushed into a pocket surrounding the French port, which was now under constant German shell fire and air attack. I want to know what it was like, so I've come to meet Richard Sampson, who was a 20-year-old gunner when he found himself in Dunkirk.
Never heard of the town of Dunkirk. I knew Calais and places like that, but Dunkirk was a strange place to me. The scene was absolute chaos. Broken vehicles of a defeated army. The town itself was burning, buildings were down, there was dead soldiers, civilians, horses, a lot of British soldiers lying around. It was absolute chaos.
With the war in France lost, across the Channel at Dover Castle, the British military launched Operation Dynamo, a daring plan to rescue as many men as they could. Well, this is where the British Army in France was heading to, the sand dunes and the beaches of Dunkirk. And what a sight would have greeted them. Hundreds of thousands of men all converging on this very spot. And behind me there would have been thousands of men dug in to the sand dunes, trying to find whatever shelter they could, because the real threat was coming from the air, from the Luftwaffe, who dominated the skies, and they were busy bombing and strafing on an hourly basis. It was relentless.
I think the worst time, we'd never experienced the Stuka bomber. Never experienced anything like it before in our lives. And that's the only time you really felt fear. It was early afternoon, I think, when we got there. And one time the Stukas came over, and I remember kneeling down in the sand, and I'm not a religious man, but I did look up and I said, for Christ's sake, help me, I'm in trouble.
So this is where we got the smaller readings with the little detector chap, so let's hope the big ones go off.
There's anything there.
Our aviation archaeologists are still in France and have been tipped off about a crashed Stuka.
Well, that's pretty good, isn't it?
The team's metal detectors are picking up huge readings. If it is a Stuka, there's lots of it.
What about when you lift it up? Is it still going? Still going?
Still there.
Still going? Still going?
Yeah. Off there. That's good.
That's very, very good. Wow.
So that's obviously the...
There's a lot of stuff there, isn't there? That's that. That's a bit more like it, isn't it?
The team are looking for proof that it is indeed a Stuka or Ju-87, and they found a vital clue. It's a bomb rack.
It is a rack, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, isn't it? But,
bomb steady.
That's a steady, so that should be a bit better, shouldn't it? There you go.
87. Stuka.
So we've proved everything that we needed to do now, I think, and better get a digger.
The Stuka was designed to strike terror into men like Richard Sampson sheltering on the beaches of Dunkirk. With its wailing sirens, it was unmistakable and came to symbolise the German blitzkrieg. In 1940, it seemed that nothing could stop the Stukas.